Thank you. All right, I'm back. So far, you've been hearing a lot about cool product initiatives, features, tools, etc., that can help you improve the quality of your mobile presence, right? What we're going to do now is something different. We're going to talk to a set of industry leaders, practitioners, who've embraced mobile and who've actually built a very, very solid, successful presence across the platform, right? So without further ado, please join me in welcoming our panelists. First up, we've got Manish Agarwal. Manish is the CEO of Nazara Games, one of the largest gaming publishers in the country today. Welcome, Manish. Manish is feeling very happy these days. 2 out of the top 10 titles on Google Play right now belong to Nazara, so good job. Next up, we've got Varun Khurana, who's the CTO of Grofers, India's leading online, on-demand delivery service. Grofers has about 12,000 suppliers, right?
That's right.
Absolutely. And services about 35,000 orders a day, right? So great job. And finally, we've got Deepak Abbott. Deepak heads, welcome Deepak. Deepak is the head of mobile growth at Times Internet, which is the digital arm of the Times Group. Deepak oversees mobile initiatives for Ghana, Economic Times, Times of India, and a host of other apps which are part of the umbrella. Welcome, gentlemen.
Thank you.
Great. So the way I was hoping that we could do this was probably have each of you talk about one thing that excites you about the smartphone opportunity in the country today, and what's that one big bet that you have for 2016? Let's start with you, Deepak.
Yeah, I think sheer numbers, India is yet to actually see the real revolution. 70% are yet to come online. So that's a big number. While we have 30% online, which is 300 million,
right.
Which is good enough for us to create some great things, great games, so that we've got millions of users already. But 70% are yet to come online, plus 200 million people who are on 2G. They're yet to experience faster internet.
Right.
So once that happens, we see the scale of growth which you're seeing now growing exponentially. So for me, I think that's what excites me for years to come.
Fantastic. Varun, how about you?
So in our case, see, our use case, I think, is fundamentally very, very mobile, right? Because, I mean, see, when you're ordering groceries or things that you use on a day-to-day basis, you realize most of the things when you're probably in the kitchen or somewhere else, right? So I mean, I think just the fundamental use case of ours is like very, very, it is just a smartphone use case, and and which is the biggest reason why we are like mobile only till date, and continues to be a part of our plan. And just the fact that how smartphones have been growing in India across tier ones is great. We are now in like 25 cities across India, and we're kind of continuously seeing order growth there as well. So I mean, this presents a great opportunity for us to kind of take this use case like all across India. So that's
5 million smartphones every month, right? I mean, that's like a huge number.
All right, great. Manish?
I think my biggest bet is I believe that gaming is going to be far bigger than TV, Bollywood, everything here in this country, because it's a device which you carry all the time. Share of time is highest, snacky content is highest, and I believe that I've been going to a lot of forums of media entertainment sector where gaming really gets some shitty corner. I believe that the biggest bet, which a lot of people are not really looking at, is gaming becoming a mainstream entertainment. That's the biggest bet which is going to happen. And that's the exciting opportunity which what Deepak spoke about, millions of smartphone data guys are really going to happen. And you're seeing green shoots of it already. For Nazara, the biggest bet is we believe that in entertainment, content is local. In movies, it's local. In TV, it's local. There is no reason why on your Play Store there should be any foreign games in top 10, top 20. So my biggest bet is I would love to be here in the same conference a year and change that. Yeah, that's my bet.
Okay, good. You've set the bar high. Good. Tell me, so Manish, just building on that, thinking about user trends, right? You believe that gaming is going to be like a big opportunity. What are those one or two user trends that you've seen specifically on smartphones that you think will help that phenomenon?
I think a couple of things from a gaming perspective. The Indian gamers are not the gamers which a lot of people think are the gamers of US or Europe or wherever. We are not a gaming nation, and we are having a first brush of gaming with smartphones. And hence, if any of you are looking at building games for India, don't get influenced by your own likings, by your own things in which you think that, hey, listen, I was playing this quality of game on console, or I love Clash of Clans, and hence I need to do that. Think of that guy who has no idea of gaming. It's its first brush with gaming. Keep it simple, keep it easy, keep it casual. The things like text-based, narrative-based, FTUE-based, first-time user experience-based, doesn't work. It's an easy pick-up-and-play game mechanics, which just keep it simple. Keep it as, you may sometimes feel that, hey, listen, my game is really dumbed down. That's fine, guys. Your users need to be evolved. If you are making for that 200 million people, that's what you need to look at. And second thing, I think I was listening to previous session, app optimization for low-end devices, keeping each and every KB of the file size as like a South Mumbai real estate, and really kind of valuing that every KB and saying that, boss, that needs to be optimized and optimized and optimized relentlessly. I think these are the two things which I will kind of put it there.
Okay, great. Yeah. Varun, how about you? What are those two interesting user insights that you're seeing? Given that you are a startup, you've grown very quickly, would be great to understand what you're seeing as far as users are concerned.
So in our case, the biggest thing that we have seen is, and which we kind of expected and was validated as a part of the process, was just the repeat behavior of consumers. And there's this big worry that when you have an app, right, and if a user does not continuously use it, then it kind of gets lost in the maze of all the apps that are there on the phone, and God knows when he or she will open it up next, right? So that was one big thing that was on our minds at the time. But I think in our case, and I'm glad we were proved wrong in this case, that there were just the repeat purchase of users was so high that in most cases what we see is that Grofers, once a guy gets a hang of it, so it kind of is amongst those apps that is placed on the home screen. So I think so that was huge for us.
That's interesting. So have you done anything in particular or launched a new feature that's helped you drive repeat consumption or repeat purchases?
Okay, so we continuously think about all the things that we can do to kind of get the guy to shop more and more and more. So and we have like a huge roadmap, right? Simple things. So the most basic thing, and which is like brain dead, right, is just notifications. Fortunately or unfortunately, I think they are like they really work for us. And I think this is something that you'll kind of hear from a lot of e-commerce companies out there. That is the reality. The other things which are increasingly getting huge for us is just like basic reorder functionality. So this is stuff which we are kind of very, very actively working on. Basic reorder functionality, being able to predict, like if I know that every so often you buy atta from Grofers, so I should, even before that you're running out of it, we'll tell you that hey, you'll be running out of it. So order now. So I think these are some of the things or use cases that we are now starting to move towards.
Excellent. Okay. Deepak, over to you. Yeah.
For us, Vernacular has grown like 4x in last 1 year.
Wow.
So just to give you some numbers, Navbharat Times used to do about 4 million active users on their mobile browser site. Now they do around 21 million just on the mobile browser.
Wow. Okay.
So in last 1 year, because of better phone support for Hindi and obviously a lot of people coming online, so that is really working for us. Not just Hindi, in fact, we launched in Tamil, Telugu, Malayalam, and that they've been the fastest growing. So TOI has grown, let's say, about 45%, which is good, but considering what Navbharat Times and all these local languages are growing, and that's like a huge opportunity still, because we're still we believe that at least we can take Nabhara Times alone to about 100 million users. So that's one thing, and time spent. So overall for Times Internet, we have about 50 million users. Last year we had about 25 million MAUs. 100% growth on MAUs, but 300% growth on time spent. Wow. So people are actually spending a lot more time on their smartphones. Excellent. So that's really one thing which is standing out.
So the point about Vernacular is very interesting. Is there something that you've done to make onboarding of Vernacular users easier? Do you think they behave differently compared to the traditional English language consumers? Or?
Oh, it's actually different. So they spend less time, but they create more sessions.
Okay.
So that's why we focus more on the mobile browser side than app. So we, for example, Navara Times is about 2 million app users, whereas 21 million on mobile browser.
Right.
That's like 10x. And we've tried, and most of them are on Android actually. They have Android phones, but somehow they don't upgrade to an app, which is okay with us as long as they are staying with us. So we made sure that the site which loads for them is really, really fast, because you understand they come from tier 2. They come from UP East, where the connectivity is not that high. So just make sure the first byte is like delivered instantly. Use less images and use more snacky content. I mean, rather than having long articles, because that's how they like to read. Keep it short. Use more Bollywood. Use content which they relate to easily. So obviously improving the infrastructure. For example, our caching engines have really dramatically changed in the last 1 year. And that has actually helped not just NBT, but all other apps which we've been serving, and we see great change in the way the images are served or text is served. So that really helps us. And plus, of course, on the app side, we've been making sure that since NBT users, they come from tier 2, the devices they use very low end. So we test for almost 170 low-end devices.
Wow.
And we only use libraries which are actually working on most of the handsets. So we eliminate libraries on app which we are okay to forego some features, but make sure that it works for everyone.
It works for at least the lowest common denominator in terms of, okay, great, fantastic. So what would be your sort of #1 challenge getting into 2016?
I think challenge right now is, for us, I think not just for us, but for the industry, I'm believing, everyone must be facing that challenge on the retention side. While we're acquiring users, we're also, losing a lot of users. And there are reasons which are internal as well as a lot of external reasons, like this huge noise about, install my app, this land grab happening. There are at least 50 companies shouting about, install my apps. Handsets are still limited. Connectivity is still limited. Space on device is still very, very limited. So while, everyone focuses on the app size to make it less so that people install more apps, but I think the space it takes on the device is far more important, because that's what forces users to uninstall the app, right? For example, for TOI, the caching alone would be 100 MB about a year back. So now we've brought it down to about 21 MB, but that's still high. We're seeing, how do we still, it has to be a balance between maintaining a cache so that, people can actually browse it easily and still not consume a lot of space on the phone so that people don't uninstall the app.
Got it. So, since you operate a portfolio of very different apps, right? Is there something that's worked particularly well in terms of keeping the size optimal, or taking something from X to Y in terms of reducing the size that the audience would find useful?
We focus more on UX, less on UI.
Okay.
So I think the prime example is ClickBuzz. A lot of people come to me saying, hey, it's a very bad looking UI.
Right.
But that's by far the #1 cricket app in India, right? It's about 40 million monthly active. We don't really care about if people don't like a UI, as long as they're coming back, 75% retention. Okay. We spend less than maybe, $10,000 in the entire year on marketing. So people are coming back again and again, and for us, UX matters, and that's where we focus on. When I say UI, I think there are a lot of sexy apps out there in Play Store. People, on Twitter, on Facebook, you meet in your circle. They would compare that with some of the global apps. But I think for Indians, they want their content to be served instantly. They want it to work, right? So our belief is that make it for masses. I think that's what works.
Okay, good. That's an interesting input. How about you, Varun? What would be your #1 challenge as you step into 2016?
2016, okay. So, see, we have so it's very interesting. Our journey kind of goes, so we started off from the more affluent kind of customers to, now we are kind of going down the chain. So it's a little bit different. So, when we started, our we started off from Gurgaon, then Delhi NCR, then Mumbai, then Bangalore, which is like all the metros, and data connectivity is relatively better. People have better handsets, so so we did focus on like the aesthetics. So I've heard a lot of good things. People tell me all the time about just the the feel of the app, right? So that has worked very well for us so far. And but now increasingly what is happening is that, see, Grofers has, we've seen like a lot of, explosive growth. So like up until like 2-3 months back, we were like barely in like, 10 cities. Now we're in like 25. So now now we are kind of starting to see that change where, optimizing on the APK size, the bandwidth that we, do over the wire are now going to start becoming important. So that is now going to be the focus for 2016. So we've already started doing all of that stuff. So get all the images to convert it to WebP, right? That was just talked about. Our app is very, very image heavy. It is. It helps make it look aesthetically appealing. So those are, I would say, the bigger areas from a technology standpoint. And one way we are very different also is that we have like a big offline component, right? An app is, I mean, if you look at our app reviews, right, you'll rarely find anything about the app per se. It's more about, delivery nahi aayi, I mean, these are things, the offline component of the app that, becomes more important. So that is, I would say an equally important chunk that is going to be a focus for us for 2016.
Awesome.
Just optimizing that for, the bigger cities and the tier 2 cities as well.
Okay. How about you, Manish?
I think for us, biggest distribution vehicle, if you want to reach to masses, is going to be via devices. So we are talking to all the OEMs and we are saying that, hey, can we embed games in your devices? Because we want to prevent the funnel drop of people not having enough balance, not having enough money on data, and can availability drive consumption. And that's where absolutely what Deepak said is, even getting a 10 MB space, what you think is, you usually think that because you're using smartphones, they're also selling smartphones, you believe that 10 MB is nothing. But then you realize 10 MB is a huge thing, and then they say, sorry, we can't embed your game. And the challenge which we face is, how the F do you make a game in 5 MB, 3 MB, 4 MB, and still really look at it, which had some semblance of graphics, some semblance of something. So we are constantly grappling with that situation that at one point, you're trying to really raise the quality bar, and other time, the belly of your market cannot support the install. Now, extend that problem, even if he downloads over the air, it's ultimately going to reside in his phone. And if it's taking 18 MB, 15 MB, then install is going to be very high. So you are acquiring users, you're spending money, but install is happening, and then it doesn't create a unit economics. So that's our challenge, is how do we really create a game which can have retention, yet be part of the constraint which the ecosystem really offers.
So as a successful game publisher with 2 top titles, what would be your advice to people who are looking at building out a large user base for their content?
In fact, we are kind of dabbling with this. We have done a couple of things. Common game development platforms like Unity or Coco make a strategic choice. If you are India focused, you may actually go with a Coco Studio 2D and don't have Unity, because 5-6 MB of which Unity kind of gives you the baggage is an additional baggage. Now you can stretch the argument even further. If you are looking at India, 90% Android market, your game is not of the highest quality, maybe then you can take a call that, hey, listen, iOS I will figure out later. I will only make Android. Then you can make some calls of native apps. And that also saves you 2-3 MB of further development. So we are kind of continuously now debating that should we start making games in native so that the 6 MB, 7 MB baggage of the development platform we can kind of get away, because writing SDK plugins and whatever it is, it's not a very difficult kind of job. So my advice is be clear about your market, be clear about your strategy, and then the choices which you make for tech stack are going to be a very big success factor as you kind of really evolve into you're creating a scalable, sustainable business.
Okay, great. So Deepak, question for you. As somebody who runs a portfolio of, again, different apps, Can you share a couple of examples of things that have worked for the Times Group to drive up user acquisition and engagement? Maybe name a couple of apps and see what's worked.
Yeah, so for us, since most of our apps are around content, so content is one of the biggest source of acquisition for us. So breaking news and bringing in latest content, latest Bollywood music, latest videos. So that really helps us. And plus using the technology. So for example, we've been staying ahead of the curve and always. So app indexing, for example, 1.5 years back, ET and TI were the first apps to do that. Music actions, which Google launched about 6 months back. Gaana was the first one to bring in music actions. Voice search on Android. Gaana was the first one to integrate that. So things like, technology is there. Google is coming up with things to bring in organic users. So just make sure that, leverage all that and acquire users using your, obviously, the app quality has to be good, content has to be good. But what we've also seen is that the biggest source of acquisition for us, thankfully, has been, Play Store featuring most of our apps, right? And that doesn't happen just because, they like us. You need to make good apps. You need to use best practices, and their review process is really, really stringent. They'll send you 1,000 things to fix. So even if they don't feature you, at least, the review you'll get from them will help you improve your app. So we make sure that, we work very closely with Google team. All our apps are following the best practices. Even if they don't feature us, at least, they keep sharing feedback with us and make sure that, all the technology that is available to us through Google or otherwise, we'll just embrace that. So for us, acquisition, I think content using good technology, and we focus more on, like I mentioned, retention is becoming a big issue.
Yeah.
So we focus a lot on re-engagement. So last 1 year, we've shifted our marketing budgets from acquisition to re-engagement. Now it's 60-40, so we spend 60% on re-engagement. Okay. And not just spending money, but also the tools which we built. They are focusing mostly on the customer life cycle and where do people drop, right? So most of the people would drop on day 3, day 5, day 7. So what can we do to actually stop them and either use push notifications or SMS or email or any other channel where we can bring them back? We've been using remarketing on Google extensively, and surprisingly, we're getting a CPC of 1 rupee 50 paisa just to bring the user back, which is like really cheap, right? So considering that, the cost of reacquiring a user, especially if user uninstalls the app, then getting him to reinstall is very, very expensive, right? So it's better that while he has the app installed for first 2-3 days or 4 days, even if you have to use external channels, just make sure that, you engage with them, bring them back. So re-engagement definitely is the biggest focus. Acquisition is happening thanks to a lot of new users coming in every month. So just make sure you make good apps. Acquisition, for me, is relatively less challenging. Retention is, I think, the biggest focus here.
Great. So to Deepak's point about quality, I strongly recommend, I'm sure lots of you already know, we have a portal, it's developer.android.com, which actually has all the core app quality guidelines that we typically recommend for apps on Play. So do spend time understanding those guidelines in case you haven't. Right? Great. So Varun, question for you. As somebody who's now seen as a leader in the very interesting online to offline space, right? Hyperlocal, online to offline. It's online to offline, right? Well, whatever.
I mean, it's offline.
O2O, right?
O2O, all right.
Yeah, it's safer.
So what would be your advice to people who are thinking of hyperlocal, right, services and succeeding in that space?
Okay, so yeah, I mean, so the interesting challenge in this whole offline to online thing is that I mean, you're kind of enabling a whole something which is done in the physical world, and you're kind of trying to make the users do it like in the in the digital world. I mean, it kind of becomes like a a chicken and egg problem, right? So first you need to kind of get enough offline so that it makes sense to a consumer, right? So I mean, because I mean, otherwise, if you don't have enough of that meat, then to a consumer, the value proposition decreases big time. So with us, I guess one of the things that worked very well was that we started off as a B2B player. So initially we were kind of like doing deliveries for the offline merchants, and we had like a whole bunch that we were doing them for. And then I guess the transition to online became, and when we kind of first launched the app, so we were a B2B business for a while, and then we launched the app and entered the consumer business. So that helped in a way because a whole plethora of merchants were like already on board, and getting that hook was easier. So in the hyperlocal space, I guess the one thing which all of you should think about is getting that hook, because I mean otherwise it's like I said, it's going to be a chicken and egg problem. Who do I attack first, and how do I reach out? So I think that hook is important. Other than that, in the mobile world, I mean in general, user acquisition is not cheap. It goes, I mean, at least for the kind of users that we go, it goes, north of like $100. So it's not cheap. So, and we have done all kinds of mediums, all the newspapers, the radios, the Google, of course, right? So we have, we've done a whole plethora. So it is expensive. So, I think, that hook that you create, I think can, go a long way.
Fantastic. So one last question for all of you. Please share with the audience one winning tip or one winning strategy that you think people can start implementing based on your experience. Let's start with you, Manish. One thing that's worked really well for you.
For us,
You'll have to be a little louder.
I think staying true to, first being very clear who's your target audience, and then staying true to needs of their target audience in all aspects, whether it's, as I said, tech, UI, UX, retention, your content, since gaming is content. So my kind of piece of advice is just be very razor sharp clear on who is your user, whom are you targeting. Because if you are confused on that, then everything else will be garbage in, garbage out.
Okay, good. Varun?
So what worked for us? I mean, like I said, business is kind of like has a digital component and has an online component as an offline component. So,
but specifically on Play and Android.
So, on Play, I would say the initial success that we got was just a lot of people, talking about the wow factor when the Grofers app just came out. I mean, the experience was amazing that when you ordered, like within an hour, the thing was at your door. In some cases, we did it in like 30 minutes or something. So I think, that initial experience that we were able to created a lot of buzz where a lot of people were just talking about it.
Okay.
So I think
sort of quality and utility that you initially
quality and
offered.
I think that was the one that created that initial buzz about it. And then after that, good old means to get to users, right?
I think I'll repeat what I said earlier. Make for the masses. Just make sure that your app appeals to millions of users. And luckily, we are in this space where we have Bollywood, news, cricket, which actually helps us bring millions of users. So for us, I think making it for the masses is something which has really worked.
Great, fantastic. With that, we come to the end of the discussion. I hope you found that useful. Please give a round of applause for our panelists for sharing their insights. Thank you.